with a thing.
That's fine.
Smile. Look good.
What? Your hair?
All
Friendly.
right.
No, all of us.
We're live.
Nice.
Yes,
Again.
welcome. I know, we did it. Welcome to our wonderful Azure Functions live webcast. We're joined here with the team. So to start with, I'm Jeff Holland. I'm a program manager on the Azure Functions team.
I'm Eduardo Laureano, also PM on the Azure Functions team.
And I'm Katie Shimizu, a developer on the Azure Functions team.
And first and foremost, without burying the lead, it is December 13th today. And as a I think this was actually your idea, Eduardo.
This is the holiday edition.
Yeah. Last week, so we're stepping it up because we did this in October.
Yep.
You brought the pumpkin for Halloween.
It was the Halloween edition, yeah.
This time we went to lunch yesterday as a team, and Eduardo's like, you know what, we got to do ugly sweaters. So I've got mine. I'll even make sure everyone can see it. Very ugly that I got from eBay, Eduardo.
And you guys cannot really see out there, but there are like berries on this thing here. It is fancy.
Quite ugly.
It is good.
Yes, and Eduardo's is nice.
Mine,
you make it look too good though, man.
Yeah, mine is really not that special, but it was cheap, so it gets the spirit going.
Katie though, I think takes the cake.
The most special one.
Can you? I don't know if we can see this.
Let me lift this up here.
So the lights are actually flashing as well. So Katie's got a wonderful Christmas tree with working lights. So we try to make this fun. We enjoy our time here. So we're excited to answer your questions. We've got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. And I'm making sure I always check with the chat. People are saying we look good. They're jealous of our sweaters so they can hear us. We're coming through.
Awesome.
So we'll start off. We have a recap of some of the big announcements that have happened. We've had some conferences that have happened.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of product announcements that we've kind of been saving for later in the year, I guess. And then we'll go over a demo and talk through some of the new capabilities, dive deeper into one of the announcements that Katie will do. Mm-hmm. We'll do another highlight of some blog posts and wrap up with a few more announcements and Q&A. So feel free. We have a few questions that have come to us ahead of time already on Twitter, which we're tracking here that we'll answer probably in about 15, 20 minutes. And then if you have additional questions as we're going or as they come to mind, if you're watching this on YouTube, just drop them in the chat window and we'll pick them up and we'll answer them as we go. And if you're watching the recording of this, you can always reach out for questions anytime by pinging us on Twitter, either one of our individual accounts.
Absolutely.
That honestly may work fine. And then there's also at Azure Functions.
Yes. Yeah. And just to point out, for finding individual accounts, Azure Functions keeps a list.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, if you go to the account, there's like a list thing, and it's like Azure Functions team members, and you can actually see everyone on the team.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
Yeah, so follow everyone on the team. So Eduardo, why don't we start with what's new and exciting and what's changed?
It's interesting because we've been going strong since like build with one announcement after the other. I still remember it feels to me not too long ago we were announcing like durable functions GA, right? Like, and then Ignite we did like functions 2.0 GA.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And that was just September, towards the end of September we were doing those, and I was going to think like at some point we're going to slow this thing down and, and start thinking about holiday break. But no, like there were a lot of things that came just within the last month. And some of it were announced at Microsoft Connect conference, which is mostly an online conference. All the content's available if you want to see it, like everything's streamed. And announced tons of things there, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the conference. What happened there?
Yeah,
because you're there on site.
That's right. So
Vegas,
it is
right?
like a mostly virtual conference.
Yeah.
So if you go to whatever the dev.microsoft.com Connect page, but they did have people in a room in Vegas as part of the Dev Intersection conference. So I got to travel down, see a lot of people, which was great. So if I saw you and you're watching this, thanks for taking the time. But there were a few exciting announcements. So from the Azure Functions side of the house, the first demo, which was always called the WOW demo, it was like, let's show everything that's the most cool.
Yeah.
The first demo heavily featured Azure Functions and announced some things like Python support, which is now in preview. It highlighted a bunch of very cool Visual Studio Code things. The other announcements it connects that we made, I think we'll go into this in the blog post too. Some announcements around durable functions, some announcements around security enhancements. But the keynote one, the other interesting thing just in the serverless space was some of the work that's been done where we've been collaborating and working some with the Kubernetes team.
Absolutely, yeah.
As they're trying to light up serverless capabilities for those types of operators and developers too. So it was fun.
That's great, yeah. And maybe we can show them like the actual blog post, so if folks like they're watching
I'll
the
paste
webcast
that in right now. Yeah.
in case you haven't seen. But what I can project and just show you real quick what we have published already, just to make what Jeff was saying a little bit more concrete. So one things we've done is in every single serverless conference we go to, they talk about security. Seems like security observability is the hot topic every conference we go to. So it was nice that Matthew kind of wrapped up a bunch of goodness in a single blog post that we're doing around security. And by the way, although we talk Azure Functions in this webcast, this functionality also covers app service. So you get all this value there. So Key Vault has always been a very high on our requests list that people wanted to keep their secrets in Key Vault, access them from Azure Functions. So now that's possible for you to do. You just have to add a reference on your app settings, and you're off to the races, and you can move your secrets there. Claims principal binding is another one. Got a lot of people excited. So there are 5 different ones, and hopefully you can see there and follow the blog post. But really, really nice to see this set of security features, and it's a theme for us. It's something we're going to keep working on more stuff we want to do. We have some cool ideas of stuff we want to do, like integration Azure Security Center, among others, but let me not, spill any information here. But that's definitely an area that we're excited about.
It might, honestly, and Fabio pointed this out when we were at Ignite, what I really love the most about the security updates too that you were showing in those 5 things is that, and I even updated my blog, because ages ago I wrote a blog talking about how you can get secrets from Key Vault in Functions, but it required code changes.
Yep.
Like you had to go change your app. I just updated that blog when Matthew released this, and what's sweet is that you can take any app that's already existing, already potentially consuming secrets, and just make some changes in the app settings side, and now it's pulling those secrets from Key Vault. So no code change required. You don't even necessarily need to republish anything, and you can now start integrating with Key Vault. So it's like it couldn't be easier, and I love how it was built that way, where it's like you don't have to pull in any SDKs. You don't even have to know how to talk to Key Vault. Just put your keys there and we'll pull them for you.
That's a good point. And the other thing is interesting is if you use multiple services, it's a single place for your secrets. Because people put them in app settings, and despite what some people think, they're encrypted and everything.
They're good there.
Although the portal kind of shows them to you.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
They mask them, you have to click a button to see them now.
Okay. But people wanted them in a single place. And some companies truly wouldn't, didn't want to have secrets spread across multiple services. So that was great. So on a different note, that one. Jeff also talked about this one, and we talked about 2.0, and when I was there in Orlando talking about what 2.0 enables, and that's what gets us excited. Here's one thing 2.0 enables. Because it's .NET Core, we can now host functions on Linux, right? So we're in public preview on that now. We're super excited about it, and Python, we revamped our Python support. We used to have this Python experimental support, which was really not up to par, our quality bar. But now we have Python on Linux using this brand new hosting model. So that's definitely an exciting one. Out of this blog post, though, Dario had some extra stuff in here. But I'll let Katie talk about that one, which is the durable JavaScript part. So skip for a second, but then there's the API management serverless offering, which is huge. Like a lot of people want sort of this pay-as-you-go, only pay for what you use in terms of your API calls. So API management now has that. So there's no reason for you to not start using API management for your workloads. And now you can do your throttling, your rate limits, your custom policy, all the goodness of API management, and maps really well with serverless workload in general. And one thing, I feel like we talked about it here, but maybe not enough.
We did last webcast a bit, but it's always worth re-emphasizing.
The serverless community library. So if you have some sample code that you want others to know about and make it easy for people to deploy their apps and share, we have a place for that. You can contribute serverless community library, your code, or when you build a demo, edit there, and then we're going to keep integrating this further with our portal, so it's really easy for people to find code instead of you copy and pasting from Stack Overflow, which I feel like is how everyone starts with their code when they don't know something. You can start here, which is going to be much better than that.
The one question that's come up a few times as well, as you highlight like the running everywhere Python and Linux support. Do you have any thoughts on like, for someone who's watching this, like what does the Linux support and the Linux consumption plan mean for them? Like, should it matter? Does it matter? Where might it matter? The fact that there is now a Linux flavor and a Windows flavor.
There have been cases where folks like JavaScript mostly and some Python that they have modules that are native to Linux, and you would have no way out if you want to host them on Windows. So that opens up the scenario for that. And as an enabler, as a platform, allows us to think of how you can bring your own container and things like that. So you can deploy as a container instead of code pieces and configuration. So it's an enabler for a lot of things. So it's a good step forward. Again, public preview. But we're super excited about. So if folks try and they have issues, and if they have things they want to do that's Linux only, try it out and report back.
And the good news is like it's the only way that Python works today. And so all the tooling is pretty well integrated with this. Like I've been building Python apps in Visual Studio Code for a few months now. I can publish to this new offering. I can run them, test them, integrate with App Insights, all that good stuff. So it's in a good state.
Yeah, the idea is still in this serverless world, right? That you don't have to really choose your OS. Like if you're a Python developer, you're in Visual Studio Code, you just publish. And things will run on Linux, and it's almost like a detail for most folks. But it's important for us to tell because allows for new stuff that you can do. So
good call out.
Try it out.
So with that, Katie, we've teased a lot, and Katie, we know this is an item that you personally have spent a lot of time on. Do you have any anything you can share or anything you want to share around some of the durable functions?
She even got a sweater. She was so excited. She got a brand new sweater just to come here and talk about her stuff.
There's not even battery power. It's just Katie's so excited about durable. It just lights up.
I need to get down to the button more quickly than I can. We should have rehearsed this, Jeff.
It's good. It's all good.
Okay. All right. So. Yes, I'm really excited about bringing JavaScript or durable functions to JavaScript. And what I have for you today is showing off the new API that we have. And it's basically very similar to the one that you will see in C#, but created with JavaScript nativeness in mind. So it should feel familiar to you as a JavaScript developer and not feel like you're using something ported over from C#. But let's dive into the code a little bit, and then I've got a demo to show it running live in production. So for those of you who are not familiar with durable functions, just a quick rundown. It's a way of orchestrating multiple Azure functions together. And we introduce a new kind of function called an orchestrator. And the orchestrator allows you to chain together multiple functions calls in code and do some task parallelization. You can do some timeout. You can do a lot of complex workflow scenarios that are kind of difficult to do in just vanilla functions. All right, so let's look at the API here. One thing I want to point out is that you are going to need the durable-functions package that is available on NPM here. The latest version is 1.1.2, and I recommend that be the one that you use.
Is that the first GA one?
Yes, that is the first GA version. The rest are preview. And then the other thing I want to point out is what I'm doing with the for those of you who are JavaScript functions devs, this might look a little familiar but a little different. Note that we've got the module.exports equals function context, but there's 2 points I want to point out here. One is that we're wrapping our call to function context in this call to orchestrator. And this call is what initializes and kind of boots up the durable task framework mechanism within JavaScript. The other thing I want to point out is this little asterisk after your function keyword. And for those of you who are familiar with generators, you'll know what that means. For those of you who are not, that is the symbol to designate this function as a generator function, which is a way of doing stepwise execution within JavaScript. They're pretty cool. I recommend checking them out. From your perspective, all you need to know is put the little star after the function thing. So within the code itself, you can notice that we've got our familiar context object, and then on that context object, we've got a df object. Now, this is populated by that call to df.orchestrator with all of the methods for the durable functions API. And since we're in an orchestrator, we're looking at the durable orchestration context API. Specifically, in this simple sample, we're looking at calling an activity function. And I pass in the name of the function, I pass in my input, and then, third point here, notice that I'm using the yield keyword. Now, this is a side effect of us using generators to implement this under the hood, but you can look at the yield keyword or yield type statements as being a place where you're awaiting some sort of async work. So each time you hit a yield keyword, we pass control back into the orchestrator function, which is pulling the strings here. It looks at what you're trying to schedule. It looks at whether or not this work has already been completed. And if it hasn't, it sends a message back to the durable functions extension, which is running in the v2 host runtime process. Remember, this is running on the language worker. When we came out with v2, we separated the two processes out. But it communicates back to the host runtime, hey, I want to do some things, and here's my input, and so on. And then the host runtime goes off and does those things, and when it's done, it wakes us up again, and we have a replay going.
Is yield any different than await on?
Actually, I was going to ask a question here,
Yeah.
and if you know it too, because I think I looked into this, and this is a common one,
Yes.
especially like I'd never seen generator functions before.
Right.
The way I think I understand it, and I'm going to kind of hope that Katie may be about it and may not, because when you hit a yield, we're actually going to like complete that method execution in the middle and then pick it up later. Like it's not just waiting indefinitely. It's actually kind of like we're going to exit a little bit early here and then continue on later. That's where this whole world of generators and yield comes into play.
Right.
Because we're not just necessarily going straight through it.
Because JavaScript code executes fully, it's hard. This is our way of stopping your function in the middle and kind of killing its execution at the point. Yeah. It is a little bit different.
Which is why, but it's weird because like JavaScript developers, I mean, unless they're experts, which I'm obviously not, look at this and they're like, I've never seen yield before. I've never seen generator functions.
I know,
so
we had
like,
a whole debate.
Did the functions team do this wrong? Did they even know what they were doing? And the answer is no. We really did look into this, and the answer is to behave how durable functions behave. This is the paradigm used in JavaScript.
Yes. And one thing I want to point out as a slight idiosyncrasy from what you're probably used to with functions, note that this is not an async function, and in fact, it cannot be an async. Oh, that's my ESLint. Sorry. It cannot be an async function because orchestrators have to be deterministic. Some of you may have seen our presentations on durable functions and the basic mechanisms, but real quick, we manage state by using a pattern called event sourcing. And what that does is instead of storing state as just like one big object, instead what we do is we build that state up again from a list of actions. We record every action that's taken, and then whenever we start this thing up again, we look at our list and go, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. It's like being very forgetful and having a chore list. But what that means is that every time you replay this function to see where your state is at, you have to be getting the same responses from those async calls that you made. Hence the determinism. It has to give you the same thing back every time. And one side effect of this is that these cannot be async functions. Now, non-async functions, typically you use the context.done syntax to end your function. However, we call that method, the context.done method, within the orchestrator function call here. Every time you go to a yield, we're checking stuff, we're creating basically a remote procedure call execution schema that we pass back to the extension. And then when we've got everything checked and we've run to a certain point, we call context.done within that method call. So if you call context.done in your orchestrator, functions is not going to be happy with you. It'll tell you, hey, I already did this. Why are you asking me to do it again? Because from its perspective, you already have done it. So instead, Jeff, if you can switch back, thank you. We're going to use the return notation to signify the end of our orchestrator function.
Great, that makes sense. So it is good. So this is now generally available. People can test this out today.
Yes.
And it's helpful to know, like this, there are some things here that you want to be aware of, both as a JavaScript user, but also potentially someone who has written JavaScript functions before, because there are some behaviors there too. And I know you've worked very hard, and Colby worked very hard, so there's a lot of really good docs out there as well.
Yes.
Some quick starts. So if this is something you haven't tried out yet, if you haven't used Durable at all, or even the JavaScript flavor, go check it out. A very helpful quick start. You can build exactly what Katie was showing.
Can I show
in just a few minutes? Sure, yeah.
These are the most beautiful docs.
They're pretty good. And now I've contributed to them, so I can take some personal pride as well.
You have, gold star. Yeah. So one thing we've done with the GA release of durable functions in JavaScript is a refresh of our documentation, so that our .NET documentation and our JavaScript documentation is treated with the same level of importance, because this is a language. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Agnostic.
Agnostic. It's Durable loves all languages.
We like all of you developers, no matter which language you program.
Yes. The other thing I want to point out is that the durable documentation has moved, whereas previously it was a subsection split into two under the Azure Functions documentation. Now it has its own subsection itself. And then you can see we've got quick starts, tutorials, samples, concepts, all the different goodies that you're used to, all of the documentation that you may be familiar if you're a Durable fan, just organized in a more intuitive manner.
Very cool.
Awesome stuff.
Very great, Katie. Thank you so much. Very helpful. I think we even got a few questions as well that we'll grab in a moment. Looks like we're okay with that. A lot of these are questions I knew we were going to get. So, Eduardo, should we switch back over to blogs? Any other announcements you want to go to? We could take
I missed a couple of things, but so let's get a couple announcements.
Okay. Yep.
So I feel like I talked about Python, but I did not show some of the stuff.
Sure. So, the blog too.
So
behind the scenes.
So we talked about the Linux consumption plan, and that's obviously a big deal. But Python support, and just like Katie was saying about how durable we want to make it natural for JavaScript developers so they can do Python the same way. So we did with Python, and this blog is fantastic, but is we make it's natural to you. You're gonna have your Python code, your .py here. You're gonna define your functions the same way, and you're gonna have your requirements.txt, which we're gonna know what to do with it, and so you operate in the same way you would operate on Python normally, but it still functions and still do everything under the covers to make this look natural. So I think that's one thing I wanted to highlight. So, and the blog goes through how you define triggers and how you code functions in Python. So check this one out too. And I missed that on the first round. Another area, it's Thursday today, right? Do people still say Throwback Thursday, or is that?
Throwback Thursday, TBT.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, so I'll do a throwback here. Because KubeCon's going on.
Yeah, just across the pond.
Yeah, so we got this question of, does functions run on Kubernetes kind of thing? And we had done this work that just through the CLI, you develop the function and you could deploy that to Kubernetes, but it seems like a lot of people just didn't know about it. So I felt like plugging this one in here, again, because it's Thursday, I can't do it. So check out these other blog posts of functions on Kubernetes on Medium, and it's an interesting one there. And then I think I can do the guest blog post, but do you have any other comments regarding, like, I know you've been doing like your demos on Kubernetes, and you might be watching KubeCon. Any other observations on?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting space. It's one of the areas that we're absolutely listening to you all in the community on. We've had a lot of customer calls where, for different reasons, people are making bets on Kubernetes. So we want to make sure that if you want functions in that context, they work well there. And even some technology that Microsoft announced during this conference applies to functions. So one of them was a project called Project Osiris that was worked on by the extended Azure Functions team, I guess is how I would say that, which allows you to, in Kubernetes, scale down to 0 for a service and then have it scale up when a request comes in. So that's kind of interesting serverless-like capabilities that are making their way to Kubernetes, and they sit across the hall from us. I was just waving at Gabe this morning, who runs.
So you can say in a single sentence, you can say there are containers running serverless Kubernetes, like you can put all the
with connected to a blockchain and running artificial intelligent workloads. And if you submit that talk to any tech conference, it will be accepted.
I think it's automatically accepted.
Yeah, they're like, oh, 6 buzzwords, bingo. 6 buzzword bingo.
Cool. We have what else you have? We have guest blog posts and Q&A.
We could do some Q&A now. It's been about 25 minutes without Q&A, and there's been a few questions from the get-go, and then we'll do some announcements. We are doing some traveling coming up, so if you're interested on where we're traveling or where there's functions content, stick around for that. There's your tease. But we'll jump into some Q&A right now. So .NET Miami asked us some questions on Twitter. There were a few here. And I never get the chance to read these ahead of time, even though I pasted these in. Okay, so I'll grab 2 of their questions, and then one of them actually was asked by someone else. So the C# programming model leverages attributes. Any thoughts on bringing that model to other languages, like decorators for Python or JavaScript? Do you want to take that? I can grab it, I think, even just to clarify the question.
I know we consider this for some implementations, like things like the OpenAPI functionality we have.
Sure, which was actually their second question.
Yeah, so how you can automatically generate your Swagger file out of what's in your code, so you don't have to go externally to define that. So the idea is you have to annotate your code somehow to achieve that. So we're looking into it, but it's definitely a harder challenge. In .NET, feels super natural.
Well, yeah, and part of it comes to the fact that, so we have this today for Java as well, where instead of having to manually use or craft the function.json, you add attributes to your code, and we will generate it, but we generate it during build. When you build your project, we have code to inject into the build pipeline and give you a function.json. Python and JavaScript do not have a build step, right? They're scripting languages. So that alone makes it so like that's kind of one of the big reasons is there's no step between where you give us your code and we turn it into a function. It's just you give us your script. That said, there is some work happening right now around TypeScript with type files, and there is this transpilation step. So I would say there's no current plans today, but it is definitely something where if you would prefer that kind of attribute level declaration for any language, it's valid feedback, maybe best for like user voice to vote it up, but it's something we've toyed around a bit. It's just it doesn't naturally fall as well into some of those other languages. Cool. I'll skip this one for now. This is a good one. For those of you who've watched many of our shows, you will get some of these questions. Dependency injection, specifically at Ignite, you showed off some really cool dependency injection stuff. And the question is, you mentioned, or Fabio mentioned explicitly, I think the word was,
oh no.
If this isn't ready by the end of the year, it's because the feature is ready. Jeff just hasn't written the docs yet. So their question is, has Jeff just not written these docs yet because we don't have this feature? Which is a fantastic question. This is the most popular one, which is, hey, what's the update on this dependency injection stuff? I'll give the update on this one. This is still extremely high. We addressed this even in our last webcast. Unfortunately, that ambitious goal and the commitment that if you go rewatch that, you might even hear Eduardo us being like, don't give him a date. We're not going to hit the end of this year. We're looking at early next year is I think when we're hoping. I'm even hesitant to say a date, but the first few months of next year, we should have dependency injection for C# developers. It was in this sprint. There's a task on Azure Functions host, issue number 3736. And when I know the issue numbers, you know that it's an issue I care about, where you can follow along on progress. So it's not quite there yet. It isn't just blocked on my docs. Absolutely something that's important and a priority. It's in our sprint plans. It's been in our sprint plans. It's just taking time to get it completed as we need it to.
And it's worth noting too that while that one didn't get done on the estimate that we made on the spot, there's all these other things we had planned, like, all the stuff we just talked about today. Python,
all the
Linux
connected
consumptions,
announcements,
durable functions, JavaScript, all that. So it's there's a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. So I think although it's a high priority, we need to deliver on things that are already in progress, and we're kind of like on the final mile to get it out.
And a bunch of the features that our team works on aren't necessarily as flashy, but they're really valuable, like connection limits. Has now been bumped to like 1,200 connections per instance. A bunch of improvements in the monitoring pipeline so that we get people who get confused because they're like, I see all these exceptions being thrown. Do I need to care about these? Do I not? So we're constantly tweaking like what telemetry are we sending? What rate are we sending? So you can follow along on the release notes, obviously. But to Eduardo's point, it's not that everyone kind of was like after Ignite they took a nap. It's just
or neither it went like lower in priority. It was just like we had a bunch of things committed and in progress already. That is all.
Okay. I'll skip this one for now, just for the sake of time, because we'll go back to announcements and I'll wrap up some of these more advanced ones. So this question is from Shafiq. He says, "Hi, Mr. Serverless." I think that's it. You, Eduardo?
Oh, that's you, Jeff.
Do Azure, Christina Warren, do Azure Functions have support for authentication and authorization as we have for other types of APIs? If we build an HTTP trigger-based serverless API, what are my options for authentication and authorization?
Ooh.
All right. So we have a few. So I think assuming that you want to authenticate your functions endpoint as HTTP, so we call it internally Easy Auth as a functionality, but externally I think just
app service authentication.
App service authentication works for app service and functions and works at the function app level. And you can configure that. There's a real tight integration when you're using Azure Active Directory and configures everything for you, creates an app in that environment and knows how to talk to your resources. So it makes it really easy for authenticate, but you can bring other identity providers as well. So you have that one. Some people deal with authentication on the API management layer, and they have options there as well. And you can authenticate, you can validate your request, you can do like JOT token validation, things like that. And lastly, the other option that you have at the function level, not function app, you have the API keys that can be at the host or at the functions level. So there are different places where you can operate over those.
And I've also seen people who've implemented like their own authorization logic in code, where it's like every time this trigger happens, you need to run this. It's a little bit trickier today because we don't have that other feature, which is dependency injection, where ideally you could just automatically run through this piece of middleware. But it's still possible, so I would agree, probably in order. App service authentication is the easiest. It's just going to layer some authentication without any code changes for Google authentication, Microsoft account, Azure Active Directory. If you need a little bit more customization, API management is great. And then there's always custom code, which actually segues us into this next question, Eduardo. Two people, both Wagner and Toon, asked the same thing. So API management now has this serverless consumption SKU, which has a subset of the features, but it allows you to do like per execution pricing. With that announcement, what does that mean for Azure Functions proxies?
Oh, great question. So the idea, when we started this, so I should go back a little bit. So functions have HTTP support by nature. You can even, just within HTTP trigger, you can configure your routes, right? Like very basic thing you can do. And then with proxies, now you can do the rerouting, route things to a different backend. You can sort of intercept, do mock APIs and all this good stuff. At that point, APIM did not have their serverless offering. Just being open about what we have. Now that they do have, we probably do want to reconcile both offerings, right? But it's, as of today, we don't have like a plan to retire it or anything like that. So you can keep using proxies just fine. But at some point, we want to bring those features to be more integrated together in a way that's still seamless to you and your proxies just work, but powered by APIM is the way I envision this in the future.
Yep, and I think the good news for people who might already be using proxies today is proxies is a feature of the runtime. It's not a separate service. So even if there's a world where in the past you might have done something only with proxies, now you might be able to use serverless consumption. We're not going to go turn this thing off for the current version. So
and it is a GA functionality that customers love and depend on. So we're mindful of that. It's not like we're going to out of a sudden say, hey, we're not supporting it. So it's something we're going to keep supporting for a long time. But again, we should have a goal of bringing these functionalities together, because you're right, whomever asked the questions, there is some overlap in what you can do. API management serverless is worth saying, though, it's more powerful.
Absolutely.
Because you can do custom policy, you can do caching, you can do rate limits, you can do throttling and all that, right? Which Proxy doesn't do any of these.
And I don't think it's a surprise, but like generally as a team, we really try to focus on what we're best at, which is why we lean heavily on things like app insights for monitoring, because it's like they're always going to provide a better monitoring experience than what we can build. This is another one. Like the API management team, their whole job is HTTP API front ends and managing those. So we're hopeful now that this consumption tier is available that we can lean on them to help make this experience.
And they work really closely with us. Like literally same floor,
Vlad,
same work. So they're all like sort of the same team for folks outside. So we're working together to come up with a proposal there.
Okay, another one under the dependency injection, which I'll just skip. Let me see if there's one. This one, I don't know if you'll know this one, Katie, because I don't think I know this one off the top of my head either. Oh, I actually do know this one. Is it possible to pass a custom status back from a sub-orchestration where the context of the parent orchestration might not be available? Do you understand what they're asking?
Yes, I do understand. That is a good question. And Jeff, I defer to you.
So the question here for those who might not know is, in durable functions today, you can set back a custom status. So if this thing's running for like an hour, you can say like, hey, are you done yet? And it can say, no, but I'm 30% done, or this is the step that I'm on now. That works fine when you're in your normal orchestrator because you have the context and you can say pass back the status. For this one, if you've executed a sub-orchestrator and you want to funnel back its status, I think the answer is probably not today. You could set your status of running sub-orchestrator, but actually having that be able to update your status, I don't think it's possible today. It's probably a feature request.
But it's awesome that Katie's here. She can take feature
requests.
Yes.
Katie, are you doing anything for the rest of the day today? You want to just build this out for our friend Christopher?
Well, Christopher, that sounds like a good idea, and it sounds like some cool functionality. If you go to our GitHub page at Azure/Functions-durable-extension.
That's it.
Then you can file a GitHub issue. Other people can do the little +1 thumb emoji, and it'll go on our backlog, and we'll take a look at it. And we're pretty quick to respond there. We take our open source commitments pretty seriously.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thinking about the implementation,
You don't know how you would solve it?
No, I'm not saying I don't know how I would solve it. I'm just saying, thinking about the implementation today, I would say, yeah, you probably can't.
Good question, though.
I have a question for Katie. If we
go for
more durable questions.
Oh boy.
So because you showed the JavaScript durable orchestrator.
Yes.
On just what you showed, you didn't show the activity functions.
Right.
Could those activity functions be any functions I built? Let's imagine on my team there's someone that he knows what to do durable, he knows how to write the orchestrator, but he might not. You might have other functions written by other people. Can my JavaScript orchestrator call into a function that's not JavaScript? Is that possible? Or is that a crazy requirement here?
So there's a nuanced answer here, Eduardo, and it kind of brings us into a request for some work that we've gotten from quite a lot of folks. So today there is a restriction on function apps that they have to be a particular language.
That's right.
If you Actually, I don't think I showed my local.settings.json file during the demo, but we do have a runtime variable, and you have to set that to .NET or Node or Java.
Because when you create your function app now, we do ask what's your runtime. You're
right.
Correct, yep.
So if you are going to, if like you have two people who are working on the same function app, and one of you likes JavaScript and one of you likes Java, you cannot write both. You're going to have to decide on one or the other. You're going to have to fight it out.
Absolutely. Yes.
However, there are ways to do cross-function app calling, making use of HTTP endpoints. And we document this. This is in our documentation about how to do this. We have some code samples to show you, and that is one way that you can separate out different functions in different languages. We're also in the beginning stages of looking at cross-function app communication and making that more of providing more first-class support for that, so that it's a little bit less setup work for you. And there'll be more news on that in the new year.
Great.
Yes.
Cool.
All right, we'll go with a few more, and then we'll wrap up with some announcements. So I'll grab this one quickly. Do we have architecture diagrams showing realistic serverless API management and functions? And the answer is we're working on it right now. So we just had a meeting yesterday with Gorka from our marketing team that there's this big effort underway that we're going to have a bunch, like 8 samples that cover things like API management plus functions, functions plus event streams, functions plus Cosmos DB, and it will be up to date with the new consumption offerings as well. It looks like, Eduardo, do you even have something that's ready now that we could link to?
There are a couple of things I have that are already out there. So one thing we've done before, I think we talked here, we do these open hacks where we get some of the customers and they we do a code with type of multi-day event. And some of them are documented. Again, we haven't updated this documentation, so they're probably using functions v1. But still, if you want to look into the architectural part, sort of patterns out there, you can go to the GitHub tech case studies. I'll make this a little bigger so folks can see. And they're really rich, a lot of them, when you're going to find diagram in different cases like retail, IoT, banking industry, and you're going to see they use several different services on Azure and they connect them together. So again, a little outdated. It's been like over a year since but we want to create more of those. So you can see, hey, a given customer, here's the architecture that he was able to achieve. So I think there's some stuff out there. I think we want to refresh them and use the latest and greatest, because all these technology stacks keep evolving. Like Cosmos keeps releasing stuff. We keep releasing stuff. So again, for now, I would just use the stack case studies. I think that's public. There's talks that we do in different conferences. I did one Ignite. Osiris did one recently in New York. And Thiago did another one that we go through in details over 1 hour. We pick 3 case studies. We go in a lot of details on how they were able to achieve something technically. So
makes sense. I think for the sake of time, we have a lot of good questions. So we might have to follow up with some of these on Twitter. I think I'm going to do one more question, and then I'll let you, Eduardo, kind of wrap it up with some of the announcements and everything that we're doing. So let me find one. These are both somewhat related. Any thoughts or plans around... Okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. This one right here. Thanks. Any thoughts or plans around like DevOps and deployment strategies for functions and how we can make that better? So setting up CI/CD with Azure DevOps takes a lot of work for functions right now is one of the questions. Is there something, whether it's ARM or DevOps integration, we're going to do to improve that or help with deployment strategies and functions? Yeah, no, that's a great question. And in line with one of the top things in our mind right now, we just to be super open, because we find it hard ourselves to configure DevOps for the first time if you haven't done it. Like if you used app service and CI/CD, there is super easy. Like you say my code's on GitHub here, and boom, everything else just happens for you. Right. So we want to achieve that sort of same level of experience and do things sort of all the work that has to happen for you to achieve that. At the same time, DevOps gives you a lot of power. You can add all these custom build steps, and you can customize this to a crazy amount of detail. So we want to give a little bit of both. DevOps pipeline, they're really strong products. We just need to get the experience better. So it's something we're currently actively working on. So we should, have maybe some stuff to show in 1 or 2 webcasts here. Yep, that sounds good. Okay, so for announcements, before we wrap up, and thank you all again so much, this will be our last webcast for the year. We will do one probably late end of January. So until then, a few things to be aware of. There's the Ignite the Tour. I think that's like it's official. Ignite the Tour. Which is happening everywhere. I think it's Sao Paulo this week, a few other places around the globe. I will be traveling to Sydney and Amsterdam. So Sydney in February, Amsterdam in March. I know I will be in Sydney. I think I will be in Melbourne. There is a small possibility that I will be in New Zealand. The only reason I'm bringing this up is if any of those locations sound like somewhere that you know of, either yourself or a user group or a customer or whomever, please let me know. So reach out to me, send me a DM on Twitter. I'm very close to being full in Sydney, and I'm debating some of these other options too. So let me know. I would love to chat while we're there. And then every Ignite the Tour has some really cool serverless sessions too. Any other ones that are coming up?
The serverless days conferences in general, there's lately always been Microsoft representation on them, either one of us or someone else on the team or someone else on the CDAs, etc. But serverless days, if you see those conferences, I think it's a great event. I think support it, go attend.
Community driven.
They're community driven. They're super cheap to attend too. So I think it's worth going if you have one close to your location.
And even too for this audience as well, if you go to, usually they do this on PaperCall, but if you go to PaperCall and you see that there's a serverless day somewhere near you, submit a session too. Like we can't travel out to many of them, especially ones that are international. But we've had some incredible people from the community who've spoken at serverless days, and we want to encourage that. We're happy to help support how we can.
Yeah, reach out to us if you want content. We've got a lot of PowerPoint slides in our stable.
It's true, absolutely. Great. Yep. I think that's it. Any other things before we wrap up?
No, I just want to do just real quick, maybe 2 minutes on guest blogs, because I feel like last time that was a hit. So Mikhail always writes great stuff, and I like how he takes a neutral position in all of them, and he really analyzes technology for what they're worth. And on this one, although the topic is durable, I really like the first half of his blog where he goes through all the different architectures, microservices, like monoliths, and from monoliths to microservice event-driven all the way to cloud and serverless. So worth checking out his blog post. Abhishek did too. They're both really good. Really heavy on the, not really focused, on the data side. So this is big data with Cosmos DB functions using Event Grid. And he always puts the diagram. So to the previous question of how do I use those products? How do you combine them together in a single architecture? Those blog posts do a phenomenal job on it. And then he followed it one post the Connect announcements that use some of the stuff we talked about. The Key Vault work that we now support, the API management serverless, and he's combining sort of all the latest functionality on a real scenario. So really good blog post, and this one is brand new from yesterday. So Abhishek, thanks for all your blogs out there. And then I had one more here. So our friend Burke keeps writing a lot of fun stuff.
This blog, I literally laughed out loud a few times while I read this blog.
It is so funny. So anyway, so he goes into how to build a report server. But I really like how he goes slowly into, if you're even new to functions, how he goes slowly on how you're going to build this, how you're going to use VS Code to implement your function and all that. So thanks, Burke, for keeping the technical content, but also entertaining us all the time. Great. So that was that.
Great.
All my...
Oh, yes. Thank you. I keep forgetting. So very good. And next time, too, we will highlight more blog posts. We, as mentioned, we read these. We love these. I couldn't keep up with all the ones that Eduardo shared, but I pasted a few into the chat window. Please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in joining our later updates. Let us know if there's anything exciting that we can help with. The other one, too, for those of you who just don't have anything to do for the rest of the day, or you can have this on in the background, the Logic Apps Live webcast is starting in 12 minutes.
Oh, nice.
So you can just have a whole serverless morning, afternoon, evening. So feel free to watch that one.
Slot? Did they give you a chocolate or something?
I got a ping from our good friend, Oded, who is helping with both. Nice. And he mentioned to do that. So aka.ms/Logic Apps Live. Nice. Ours is better. But
we have better sweaters.
Yeah, that's true. I doubt they're going to have the
I
sweaters.
don't think they're going to one-up us on the sweaters. I really doubt it.
But that's it. So, Katie, thanks so much for joining. Anything else you want to add before we close?
I have just one question for you, Jeff. Are we going to hear the Twitch streamer voice?
Oh, yeah. So be sure to click that subscribe button. And thanks so much for the like, Josh. Appreciate the donation. All right. That's our Twitch stream moment for the day. And appreciate again. Have a wonderful end of the year. Take some time off if you can. And we'll see you all again in January.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks a ton.